My one big thing this week, Barbie.
Yes.
For a transition.
We should have worn pink. Why aren't we in pink today?
I have some pink. I don't have a lot of pink, actually. Yeah, we should have worn pink for this. Barbie. Barbie is now available to theater goers in Saudi Arabia, and as Arab News, the leading local English language news outlet in the kingdom, noted this week, Barbie fever has gripped the kingdom, with the outlet reporting that, quote, people have been rushing to cinemas here to see it. Barbie, of course, is the movie starring one of my favorite actresses, Richard, the enormously talented and incredibly easy to look at Margot Robbie, which is already
Gosling. Sorry.
No, Margot Robbie. I think it's Robbie. It'll be Robbie to me. Which has already grossed $1 billion at the U.S. box office. The film is also controversial for some. My one big thing is not the film itself, but the moment we are in right now in history, and you just alluded to that in your one big thing. Until a few years ago, you couldn't see any movie or film in public in Saudi Arabia. But now you have Vision 2030. Social and economic reforms have not only revitalized cinemas and the business of cinema, but helped to seed a new local film industry in Saudi Arabia. They've also continued to expand the potential content sources for Saudis and other moviegoers in the kingdom. And as I was researching this, and really over the last few days, I have this question in my head that is, if this film came out when Saudi Arabia was just opening up its theaters for the first time in decades a few years ago, would it have been allowed? And would it have been as well received as it has been now? I mean, Arab News said that people in Saudi Arabia are rushing to see it. It's interesting the timing of this film, which has caused controversy here in the United States and really around the world. What's interesting also is that while the debut of the film in Saudi Arabia was scheduled to be before the United States and then was slightly delayed, the kingdom nevertheless still permitted its showing, having just reallowed cinemas again just a few years ago. That is not the case in neighboring Kuwait, which has banned the film, and Lebanon's culture minister has called for it to not be allowed either. Again, this is not about the movie itself, but really what it says about the status of film and also culture in Saudi Arabia. It should be said that there are differing opinions on the film in Saudi Arabia, and both the Arab News article I mentioned and another one in the New York Times highlights differing opinions in Saudi Arabia about the film, and there are opinions across the spectrum. That's interesting, and frankly, as an outside observer, and we are outside observers, healthy, strikes me as healthy. As our guest on last week's episode of the 966, Badr El Saif, who was quoted in that New York Times article I just mentioned, said, quote, banning the movie Barbie fits into a larger tilt to the right that's increasingly felt in Kuwait, he said. And then again, he made that comment to the New York Times right after we spoke with him last week. Saudi Arabia has debuted the film, and there is open debate about its merits in the media, and really on social media is where you're seeing a lot of the commentary. Again, this is not about what I think, because it couldn't be more irrelevant as an outside observer who also hasn't seen the film, it should be noted. But what is noteworthy to me is the situation in general. It's that this is sort of a clear moment in time where one can kind of look around and say, wow, things are definitely different in Saudi Arabia now. You have theaters, you got Barbie, you have women driving to go see it, wearing pink. Then you also have an open and civil debate about its merits. So that's noteworthy to me too, that Saudis are sort of having a conversation among themselves and in the media, sharing what they think about the film. My one big thing a few weeks ago was about Saudi women and all the changes happening in the kingdom for women. Basically how cool it was that they're achieving so much and experiencing the opportunities presented by Saudi Arabia's general progress in harnessing the power of its women. And it's just an amazing moment that we're in right now, Richard, and an interesting thing happening right now. It's pretty cool. And that's my one big thing, by the way.
I was on mute.
The curtain comes down and a clap comes.
Good one. And I think that was well formulated. And it actually fits. Our one big thing's fit in terms of the big swing. You know, Saudi Arabia. But I'll refer to Badr El Saif, and Badr El Saif puts his finger on something that's really interesting in terms of what Saudi Arabia is trying to do. So what's Saudi Arabia trying to do? It's trying to liberalize socially to an extent. We've seen this in other authoritarian states where the liberalization is coming from top down. Extraordinarily close attention is paid, I'm sure, from decision makers, and they're tracking social media, they're tracking attitudes, trends, this sort of thing. They're trying to understand what the load will bear in essence. And so, as Saudi Arabia tries to make the society more enjoyable for its youth and for its population, you can do more things. You can be more active. You can, obviously, there's employment opportunities. So, we're trying to engage the population in so many more entertainment options, and trying to engage the population. But what's the limit? And the Barbie thing is really interesting to me. And I'll say this because let's remember, Lightyear, Buzz Lightyear, that was banned in Saudi Arabia. The Immortals was banned in Saudi Arabia. The recent Spider-Man multiverse was banned in Saudi Arabia. You couldn't see that. Barbie was. So I think each of these decisions is made within the context of what the load will bear. And what Butter was referring to was really interesting because the 15th Arab Youth Survey came out recently. A comprehensive, wide, Arab world survey of youth, and it confirms sort of what the Arab Barometer, another well-respected recurring survey, found, which is that in general, youth in the Arab world are getting a little more conservative. I mean, basically, there's a conservative trend, and what the Arab Youth Survey found was 54% of those polled emphasized the importance of religion, tradition, and family in their personal and public lives. In a similar vein, 76% were concerned about the loss of traditional values and culture, 65% overall, and 70% in the Gulf prioritized preserving religion and tradition over creating a tolerant, liberal, and globalized society. So, in trying to thread this needle, Saudi leadership understands the perils on both sides, going too far one way or another. And you see in Saudi Arabia, and to be honest, that line is not entirely clear to everybody. We see people, being detained in Saudi Arabia who were like, it wouldn't apparently be a reason for it. They may be pro-Saudi, whatever. They may be, so like a lot of things, Saudi Arabia is trying to move in a big way in a certain direction, but they're trying to do it in a nuanced, sustainable way. And so it is really interesting that they let Barbie go through, but maybe one before or the next one doesn't. And I just have to believe, and that's why I think your one big thing is good to point out this. I just have to believe they're looking at every one of these choices that they make in terms of how much they liberalize in the context of what the load will bear, trying to be really sensitive to basically a conservative society, trying to, probably paying very close attention to these youth, these surveys, and doing all sorts of research and data analysis on their own. Again, trying to move along a spectrum without losing control or alienated significant and key parts of their population. Like so many things in Saudi Arabia today, everything is consequential and everything is a bit of an experiment. It's not like there's a tried and true path and exactly what if you push this button, this happens. It's all sort of trying to figure your way through in an organic, authentic way to get where you hope to get. Interesting stuff. And and that's a long way to say this Barbie, this is just a movie. Obviously it's $1 billion movie. It's a phenomenon all over the world, but it's a movie. But, when you look at Saudi Arabia, you plop it down in Saudi Arabia and here, make a choice about this. It's so much more than just a movie.
Yep. And should be noted that that's a choice that they are making, not that anybody else is making for them. And right. that's sort of and I think we overlap there. I think it's the point of this whole one big thing is just exactly what you described. This is the situation and it's pretty fascinating. I do want to see the movie. I mentioned that I had my brother and his wife and his family and my parents in town visiting, and in exchange for some golf, we traded, I should say, a girls' outing to go see Barbie, and they loved it. They couldn't stop. They tried as hard as they could to not talk about it in front of us, and I really want to see it, but I don't do movie theaters, so it's going to be a while, I'm sure. But as soon as it comes out, I can't wait to see it, and it's cool that people in Saudi get to see it too.
So, well, Al, when I see it, I'll try not to give away the plot.
You're gonna be gabbing about it. You'll be wearing pink.
Yeah. You know.
Maybe I'll work some pink into my golf outfit tomorrow, Mr. Wilson. Just as an element of distraction, perhaps.
You know, yeah. This is just a nod to Barbie. I guess I could find something pink too.
Yes, I should add to the Margot Robbie comment. She is in so many really good movies. Like she's in some phenomenal films. Wolf of Wall Street. It's just like when you get into her IMDb, it's like she's a enormously talented actress.
Who Margot Robbie? You say who is this? I've never really. Is she actress? What is she?
You are. Now I know somebody else is in the room listening to you, and you're trying to avoid any trouble.